age. Thank you, Rena. That's a great initiative. My name is Mark Sege, and I'm the Senior VP of Policy for the CMPA. For those of you watching on live stream, we welcome you, and of course, live stream is brought to you by the Canada Media Fund, or as we all know it, the CMF. It's now my great honor to introduce our luncheon speaker today, the Honourable Mélanie Joly, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, who will be joined in conversation with the President and CEO of the CMPA, Reynolds Mastin. As you may know, Minister Joly is a trained lawyer, gaining degrees both at l'Université de Montréal and Oxford, where she studied European and comparative law. She worked at two high-profile law firms in Montreal, becoming the managing partner of the Montreal office of international communications firm, Cohn & Wolfe. In 2013, as you may know, the minister founded a new municipal party and ran for the mayor of Montreal. As you also may know, in a way thankfully, she finished a very close second. So speaking on behalf of many in our industry, actually we're quite pleased, I have to say, that you did not succeed in that campaign, Minister. Because as you also know, in October, Mélanie Joly was elected in her riding of Montreal and to the House of Commons. She was not long after, as you also know, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, appointed Mélanie as Minister of Canadian Heritage, thus becoming the Honourable Mélanie Joly. You may know that she was given a fairly important mandate, including, and I quote, an overarching goal to strengthen our culture and creative industries. I believe we have a champion as Minister of Canadian Heritage. In addition to her professional activities, you may know, Minister Joly is heavily involved in the philanthropic sector. In fact, her Wikipedia page lists no fewer than 16 organizations she has worked with, and in 2010, she became the first Quebecer to receive the Arnold Edinburgh Award, which recognizes philanthropic involvement within the Canadian cultural community. Clearly, she is well qualified for her current role as Minister of Canadian Heritage and will bring her considerable knowledge and experience to this role. We are so thankful she's made time in her busy schedule to be here today. Minister, thank you. So I ask you, please join me in welcoming the Honourable Mélanie Joly and the CMPA's President and CEO, Reynolds Mastin, for their session.
Wow, thank you. Great welcome. So
Minister.
you're interviewing me.
I am.
Okay, perfect. I'm ready.
The high privilege and great honor of doing so. And bienvenue à Prime Time.
Merci, merci. Pleasure to see
avoir
everybody. Yes.
Ici sur cette scène avec nous. So we're going to do a little bit of a hybrid interview. I mean, there's no question that with all of the excitement that's been generated by this new government, you have yourself generated a huge amount of energy and excitement with what you're already bringing to the portfolio. And we wanted to give people a sense of what drives you, your background, and then we'll get a little bit into the policy meat of things.
Because I must say, I feel privileged first of having been elected MP of Huntsic-Cartierville in Montreal, but also to have the best portfolio of this government, which is heritage.
Well said. So let's start with this. You've been very actively involved with organizations that have been focused on engaging young people in politics. Why do you think there has been such a high level of political disengagement by millennials? Though it went up a bit, I think, the last election, but generally that's been a concern. And when you speak to a 25-year-old who's never voted before, what do you say to them to persuade them to cast their first ballot?
It's a good question. Actually, I really believe that young people are interested in what's happening in their community, what's happening in the world, but there's a disconnect between government and political institutions, with particularly millennials, for different reasons. I wrote a book about that, actually. I think certainly that the last elections was one of the first time that there was much more an engagement on the part of young people. But I think that that disconnection is based also on the fact that our government and our political institutions are aging way faster than our society, and we have an issue at keeping the pace and modernizing it, and I think that's part of how can I say, the cynicism. Also, I think that there were not that many important, there was not an important political socialization for millennials, although in Quebec, I must say that the students' protests, where 100,000 of people were in the streets in Montreal, was an important factor for them to realize that they have an impact on society. And I think that that's a core belief that must be better thought and really nurtured with millennials and with young people in general, that ultimately they have an impact on their society, and eventually that impact can be translated in a political system, and to that extent they can better their world and our world by getting involved. So it's all about, and I think the biggest, what I'm very proud of being part of the Trudeau government is the fact that we've been able to send a positive message, yes, but to keep that humility that is important, to keep the trust of population, and ultimately not to be disconnected to the population.
And you've set an incredible example in that regard. Starting with, actually not starting with, but we're going to go there. A couple of years ago, as Mark mentioned, you ran for mayor of Montreal.
Yep.
You came a strong second.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, what led you to enter the race in the first place?
Mm-hmm. I was very frustrated with what was happening at the time in Montreal. There was lots of corruption scandals. You have to remember the day I launched my campaign, the interim mayor, which was Michael Applebaum, was arrested on corruption charges. And I was talking about the younger generation. Well, we were a bunch of young people that wanted to enact change. And we were very much inspired by what the Trudeau and different important political leaders in the 50s and the 60s had done to create a modern society, a true Canadian modern society. And we wanted to have that type of impact, but we believed also in the importance of changing our city. And I'm happy to say that, unfortunately, a lot of us were not elected. 8 city councilors were elected. I wasn't. But a lot of the people that were involved in the campaign are now part of the Trudeau government, in the sense that they may be chief of staffs or working for the prime minister. So lots of that, these ideas and that energy that was present during the campaign is now in Ottawa to a certain extent. And I really, for me, politics is not an end, it's a mean. And I profoundly believe, it's in my core beliefs, that politics is a vector of change. We always think that change can come, but can arrive because of the business sector, the arts sector, science, but it's also true for politics. And that's why I like to think that maybe I'm setting the bar too high for myself, but I like to think that I'm here to hack the system to a certain extent, because lots of things must be changed, and because we're facing an extremely challenging time because of new technologies and because of the digital shift happening. And I think, Reynolds, we will be talking about that.
We can go there right now.
Well, if you want, I'm following you.
Sure. So let's talk about that. You've given a few interviews where you've focused on this whole question of how do we ensure pride of place for Canada in the global digital marketplace. Clearly, that's a preoccupation of yours and of the departments. So first question is, do you think Canada has fallen behind in that regard?
Well, certainly the industry and in general society is facing a challenge, as I was saying, because of the digital shift. But as a government, we were elected on an agenda that is based on growth. And how do you generate growth? Well, there's different ways. You can increase the population. You can, really invest in innovation. And well, by investing in innovation, you just don't invest in innovation. So how do you do that policy making to drive that innovation? Well, you have to have the right ecosystem. And arts and culture and the entertainment, the media industry is all at the core of that innovation. And when you think about it, the creative economy in Canada is worth $48.8 billion. That is twice as much as forestry, fisheries, and agriculture altogether. So the impact is very important. So how do we, that's why we will be investing in CBC Radio-Canada to have a stronger public broadcaster that is, adapting to the, as I was saying, the digital shift, but also to create in French I would say la relève, so new arrivals. We will be investing in Telefilm and the National Film Board, and also the the Canada Council for the Arts, because it's part of our strategy at terms to, of course, support and promote our identity, but also to create that growth. And to that extent also, we have many strategies when it comes to international exports cultural exports, and reinvesting, actually it's part of my mandate letter to modernize ProMarts and commercial routes, and working with Global Affairs Canada to relaunch and modernize these programs, but also adapt them to the reality of new technologies.
So let's pick up on that last point because you mentioned exports and driving exports, and what an important role our sector can play in Canada's export success. You've also mentioned in interviews that you're collaborating with International Trade Minister Chrystia Freeland on this very thing. How do we increase the export potential of our industry? And in the platform, the Liberal Party platform, one of the commitments that was made was restoring trade routes, as you were mentioning. So how important a focus will this be for you? Mm-hmm. And what role do you see independent producers potentially playing in achieving that objective?
Mm-hmm. Well, I have great news to announce, because I'll be, I just came back of the Irish Embassy in Ottawa. If you haven't been there, it's a nice place. And the Ambassador Bassett and I had the chance to sign a new treaty for audiovisual co-production. So that's great news. It's been, Canada has been working for some time on it, and I'm pleased to be signing my first co-production.
Congratulations. Wonderful.
Thank you. We don't want to sign co-production treaties just to sign co-production treaties and, brag about the fact that we're signing so many co-production treaties. We want to have treaties and fosters new relations that will strengthen our cultural and economic ties. And certainly with Ireland, well, we have the example this year with Rome and with Brooklyn, which are doing extremely well on the awards circuit, and there's I'm very proud to say that there's lots of nominations for them at the Oscars, and so we want to make sure that we're strategic when we think about how we develop our cultural exports, and also we're working very hard to pursue our membership to the Council of Europe's co-production fund, which is Eurimage. So my department is working very hard on this. Now, to your question of how can the industry, how can we work better with the industry, we will be launching public consultations to have more information and understand what are your interests and also what are your concerns when it comes to cultural exports. But in general, we will be also looking at how, as a government, we can, as a government, as a regulator, and as a legislator, better develop our framework and our ecosystem, like I was saying, in order to adapt it to digital. And I know not a lot of countries have done this, and we're pretty much all of us, including me, looking at how things are evolving and where will ultimately consumers go and where they're heading and what these technological changes will have have impact on how they consume content. But we need to be very much upfront and modern about this. I'm very much tired to see that there's a lag between how the government reacts or how the state reacts and how basically the industry is way much ahead of us. So as a Minister of Canadian Heritage, this is my main priority, to make sure that we understand how we can create a new model which is really adapted to the digital shift. So it sounds fun to say, but it's very complicated.
Minister, we only have a couple of minutes left. And I just want to touch on one other topic. So clearly you already are having an impact on politics, but one of the remarkable things about you is you've also been recognized for your impact on the arts and cultural sector. And as Mark mentioned in introducing you, you were the recipient of the Arnold Edinburgh Award, and that's awarded to a young business professional, age 40 or under, who has demonstrated exemplary leadership and volunteerism in the arts. So clearly, you've been a passionate advocate for the arts for a long time. Where does that passion come from?
I don't know. No, it's not true. My mom would cry just to hear me. Actually, my mother was a teacher and a school principal, and she really made sure that my brothers and I would do, would try everything. So from sports to culture, having me cry in front of my piano, not being able to play piano, and my parents were the first to go to university. They were part of that, Quebec generation of French-speaking people going for the first time and investing in education. So I was the first one to study abroad, but there was a lot of ambition in my family to invest in education and knowledge, and arts was just part of that education. And my parents liked collecting art in their own way. And then when I studied abroad, I went to the Tate Museum, and then bit by bit, I realized that, especially in contemporary art, there was lots of young people that were getting involved But that was not happening in Montreal. And there was a huge generational gap between the people that were in charge and basically there was no new Gen Y or Gen X people getting involved in these philanthropic groups that were supporting theaters and dance companies and arts. And I got involved at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Montreal, and that was when Justin Trudeau's brother, Alexandre Trudeau, well, I met him. Actually, I tried to convince him to get involved. I tried to reach out to Ben Maroney. He never came to the party. So basically, I never continued discussions with him. Too bad, Ben. And that's when, bit by bit, we created a new generation of people that got involved into different arts company, and then some of them went to, and we were involved also into different political think tanks, and then some of them went into politics. We launched a municipal party, ran for mayor, and then, you know, a lot of us are now involved with this government. So it comes back to what I was saying at first. It all depends on your core belief, whether you think you have an impact or not. And then all your actions follow. So this is how I certainly look at my department. I know that heritage has never been so strategic. That's part of what I think and what I believe in, and I'm for sure will make sure that there's going to be important changes in order to adapt Canadian heritage, but also Canada to what we're facing in terms of digital.
Well, you certainly had an impact on this audience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Mr.
Reynolds.
Joly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.